demo of using this custom GPT for looking at making decisions about a new job. So first of all, you need to add a couple of CVs or resumes, a couple of years apart. So I've got an old one from 2019 and a modern one from 2025. So there's my two CVs, and hit the button. And at this point we have to wait. The purpose of having the two CVs or two resumes is so that it can look for patterns over the course of your career and things that you've been changing or moving towards. We watch what it's thinking. It's considering alternative information, stuff that would help, etc. Obviously, if you also give it things like copy and paste of your LinkedIn profile page or other information, it will use it. Here we go. So first of all, it's trying to figure out who I am. It's trying to figure out what I'm good at, what my long-term abilities are, my underlying skill set, principles that matter to me, things like that. And then it's highlighting this, what's unusual about you, what's going to cause issues, or what are things that interviewers are likely to probe on. So it's pointed out, in my case, non-linear chronology and many different roles. Some throwing some shade at some of the text on my CV. There you go. Shift over time. Originally read like a classic CTO VPN, just scale up, and 2025 reads like an AI executive architect coach. So the details don't matter. The details in my case don't matter. It's just to show that it's thinking about things that it can then use later on. So then this is a core part of what it's going to do. It's going to try and predict what will actually happen. So you'll consistently win on these things, etc. But here's where we start to get interested. Where interviews go sideways. And it's come up with a few different issues. It says how it expects to be evaluated. And then it's got a prediction of what happens when you're actually in the role. Just interested to see this actually. So first 30, 60 days, quickly raise the quality bar. So very effective in the first 2 months. First 6 months, you'll improve the organization. Yeah, fine. Not something you often get credit for. That can often backfire because it involves stepping on a lot of toes. I was expecting it to say something about that, but it didn't. Okay. Main threat. You'll see the dysfunction early and get frustrated. Your pattern is make it better, not live with it. Those things are certainly true earlier in my career. How much they're true today, don't know. But again, I'm only interested in this for the purposes of giving us some meat for it to work on. It's going to make an attempt at figuring out actual salary bands as well. So what it needs now is asking for additional information that might help. The main thing I would suggest adding is not so much for LinkedIn, because that typically duplicates your CV, but a brag doc, and it will describe it different ways when you run this yourself. But just focusing on literal career achievements in a simple number format. A lot of people already have that in their resume. A lot of people don't. If you give it multiple other CVs or resumes, that's fine. It will use those as well, especially as it says variants. LLMs don't care. You give it 6 copies of your CV if you want. It's not prescriptive about how many it uses. So I'm now going to say, I'm just going to skip ahead. So let's pick a job I might have applied to. I haven't applied to this, but let's just pretend I had. So we're going to take this, copy and paste, and say, I applied to this role. What do you think happened? So we're just going to give it some background information and using the markdown format to make it clearer to the LLM exactly where the role description starts. Sorry that 5.2 is a little bit slow today. You may have noticed in passing there, it said something about this is a phase 2 issue, because for the purposes of keeping this video short, I've kind of forced it into the phase 2. Normally it would prefer to run, it's set up to try and run in phase 1, where it's just gathering information for a bit longer to really flesh out the depth. But I reckoned that its first pass, just from using the 2 resume documents, was good enough for us to move forward. Prediction. Most likely you were screened out at the CV stage. Because this CV that signals these things often triggers doubts about these things. Even if you can do it, the screeners may not see the evidence fast enough. Next, most likely, you got initial interest, then got level mismatched. Overqualified, wrong shape. Less likely, you progressed, then failed on one of the, whatever. We'll assume we don't get that far. So, the key mismatch. For a forward deployed engineer, what they want to feel instantly is these 3 things. Great. So if you want to get past the screening stage for an FDE, you need to be showing these 3 things. Fine. So phase 2 question. Don't answer vaguely. Now this is it, moving us into phase 2. The custom GPT now wants to know what actually happened. So let's just say, let's just say applied 3 months ago, no response at all. There we go. So in this case, we're saying that, applied for a job at OpenAI, got no, this is not to throw shade on OpenAI, this is not a real case, but applied to OpenAI, never heard back. This is probably the most common instance for most people with job applications in 2024, 2025, 2026. As it says, there are many reasons why you might not have heard back. And one of the difficulties as a candidate is you don't have no idea which it is. While it's doing that, I'm going to go, I found a job earlier that I thought might be another interesting one. Where's it gone? I've lost it. Fine, I'll make a new one. So let's do AI director job role. Head of AI job description. So just finding a random job role and putting, okay, that is not an actual job available. So can we go to Google Jobs, please? Here we go. Let's find, because this seems like something that would be more compatible with how it reckons my CV looked. Right, so if we do full description and just grab that. So if we imagine this is the one that we're considering going for, because the purpose of the custom GPT really, after talking about my background, where I'm going, what I want, and talking about some recent failed, or maybe not failed, interviews. Interesting there. OpenAI's interview guide says resume review typically gets response in 1 week. So if you did reply and didn't get a response in 3 months, then as it says, you never entered a human loop. Interesting. I wouldn't trust an LLM to say something like this unless it's matched with an actual citation to a web page that itself is clearly official. Because without the citation, without it doing the web search, your assumption has got to be that it's just guessing when it says something like that. But if it's done a web search, it's probably an actual quote. Anyway, so it's got some actionable things, but we don't care. We're going to move on from that because what we want to say now is, so here is a new job, received an offer, should I accept it? And this is the final phase, really. So again, I'm pushing it forwards, but this is the final part of the custom GPT. This is what we were trying to build up to all along. There you go. It's identified. We've jumped it into phase 3. Nice. You can accept it, but whether you should depends on a few things. So it's trying to map my expectations, requirements, desires to their expectations, desires, etc. This is interesting. The main risk is the classic trap. Director of strategy becomes head of PowerPoint plus steering committees. Now, as it happens, I picked the head of AI director role, not because I'm currently doing one, but because I've spoken to a lot of people recently who have worked with heads of AI, or I have spoken to heads of AI at different companies. And this description here fits a lot of the complaints I've actually been hearing from some of those people about what the role has turned out to be versus what they'd hoped it would be. So I would say this is pretty much bang on the money right now. Then it's assessment. Given how you tend to operate, this role is either a career amplifier or a pace killer, which is great because that gives us an either or binary thing that we can measure for during the interview ourselves or with questions. And I have set it up with hinge point questions. So a hinge point question is a question that however it is answered, whoever answers it, whatever they say, will inevitably force you towards an interpretation of A or B. There's no and they don't have to be specific, but what, as a side effect of their answer, it will reveal one thing overwhelming or the other. So it's given you questions to ask like, do you have one C-level owner? Do you control prioritization over initiatives? Do you control a real budget? Not just headcount? Things like these that are very, there's no way for them to wriggle out of the answer. And if they try to wriggle out of the answer, that itself is an answer. And then at the end it gives a guidance for what scoring system you can use for deciding whether to accept or not. I am not 100% happy with these scoring systems. I tried tuning this a bit, wasn't convinced that these are brilliant. I mean, they're okay, but I feel in most cases I could do better myself by hand. So when you get to the scoring, you might want to take the one it gives you and then improve it yourself. And then it gives some guidance on question openers or things that you could stay. If you just wanted to ask one or two of these questions, or you wanted an opener for the recruiter you're working with or something like that, you can use that. And then if you send the offer details, right, let's just say, I'm making this up off the top of my head. Let's say 150k salary plus up to, let's say 20% bonus plus non-specified hand waving. This is fairly common in London. Hand waving equity. I'll put it in quotes. Say reporting line to, should we say CFO? I'm deliberately making this a little bit iffy, like there should be some things it should call out a bit here. And no one is really sure what the key outcomes are. They expect me to figure that out. Need to figure that out once in role. Throwing quite a lot of shade on the London recruiting market with this one, but there you go. And apologies to whoever wrote this job role. I haven't even looked at it properly, and I am in no way criticizing that job description. I am just creating material for the custom GPT to talk about. you can guess the kind of stuff that's coming out. I'll let it finish just so we can see, but that's the end of how I would then be using it. Obviously, if you're going to use this, you want to start a new conversation for each new job you work on, because you want the context to be fresh and unpolluted. I'll show you in a second how I would actually do it on a practical sense. There you go. Given what you shared, don't accept this. It's worked out that's around the upper end of directory data. Equity that's non-specified should be treated as 0. Yes, very much so. And then it's criticised some of those things I put in there. Like I deliberately put reporting to the CFO, knowing that was a bit, that would be an amber flag to me in such a role. I'd be like, why are you reporting to the CFO instead of someone more appropriate? And obviously no one knows outcomes. That can cause a lot of problems. It will then automatically normally go into some level of renegotiation. If not, obviously you can prod it to do that. So if I now wanted a different job to evaluate, you could start the whole conversation from scratch, or what you can do is just scroll back to the bit where you put in the job offer, and hit the edit button. Sorry, the web interface to ChatGPT still does not work properly with keyboard navigation, but delete this part and put in job number 2 that you're considering. You stick it here, and then if you hit send, it will obviously reuse the whole first part of the conversation, and you don't have to go through that. But if you wanted to go all the way back and change the CVs, or if you wanted to change the historical job experiences, you would need to go back to this point. And I would normally suggest doing several rounds of this, things I applied to, what happened, because it'd be very useful when it compares what it expected to happen with what actually happened. And that reveals places where detail wasn't in your CV or resume, but maybe should have been. And it enables it to work around the fact that your resume is not perfect, and that there's additional details about you that you haven't included. And it enables it to give a much more accurate response. So I would normally go through several rounds here, and possibly throw in a few more extra CVs, resumes at the start, before getting on to the final analysis of individual jobs. And of course, I should probably share the URL. So the URL is, there isn't a short URL. I will stick this on the page when I post this.